Nikkud. It's the system of vowels and pronunciation marks, and it's the last thing you need to know to read Hebrew. So, kadima. Shalom and welcome back, everyone. I'm Sapir, and today I'm going to be talking about the Nikkud system. This is the system of vowels and other markings that help with pronunciation. And in biblical Hebrew, it also gives some guidance as to grammar and the chanting. Once again, I got too ambitious trying to cover all of the modern Nikkud in one video. So the Nikkud video will be in two parts, and this is part one. This first part covers vowel sounds, and the second video, which is available today, covers dagesh, the sheen and seen dots, and punctuation. So between this video and the videos on the alphabet, you will know 99% of what you need to know to read and pronounce Hebrew. So, disclaimer, what I'm teaching here today does apply to both modern Hebrew and biblical Hebrew. But if you are a biblical Hebrew learner, this is just going to be an introduction. You are going to have to find another source that will teach you the rest, because in biblical Hebrew, the system is a lot more complicated and advanced, and there are a lot of more diacritics that I don't know, and therefore I'm not going to teach. So, biblical Hebrew learners, if you can master Nikkud, the whole system, I have a lot of respect for you, because as much as I love grammar, I'm not sure I could do it. So let's get started. So, as I mentioned, the Nikkud are dots and dashes that are around the letters. And so it's hard to get a sense of their position if you don't put a letter there. So I'm using this letter. Do you remember what letter this is? That's right. It is mem, and it sounds like like an M. So I'll use the letter mem to show where in space the vowel mark goes, and also where in time the vowel is heard with relation to the consonant. So when I give vowel sounds, they are going to be spoken in modern Israeli Hebrew, which is the Sephardic accent. And that's because this is what all my teachers speak. So it's always hard to know which vowel to begin with. There's no order to the vowels as there is like an alphabetical order. So I'm going to start with this vowel, which is shva, or sometimes we also call it schwa in English. And it is two dots placed one on top of the other underneath the letter. It's really more like a non-vowel. It technically has no sound. But it's not always easy to make no sound in between some of the consonants or at the beginning of a word. Biblical Hebrew learners seem to spend a lot of time learning to distinguish between the silent schwa and the voiced schwa. But for modern Hebrew speakers, this distinction is more intuitive. They don't really talk about it a lot in class. We just do our best to say a word with no vowel, and occasionally a short little vowel does come out. So if you are a linguist or a grammarian, or you remember elementary school, you may remember learning about the schwa. And when we write it in English, it usually looks like an upside down lowercase e. And you sometimes also will find it in dictionary pronunciation guides. They'll use it when they're showing you how to pronounce a word. And they will often say that it sounds like the A in about, in the word about. So think about how we say that, about. It's hard because it's always unstressed, but it really actually in English has the sound of a very short, unstressed, short U, like the U in the word tub. Tub, tub, about. But that's not how an Israeli schwa sounds. An Israeli schwa sounds more like a short sound. And this is important because I've actually heard it said that this is one of the quickest giveaways that somebody is an American, is that we often pronounce the schwa like our American schwa. And so try not to do that. It gives you away as a not, I mean, of course, we're all going to sound like non-native speakers, but you want to sound as close as you can to a native Israeli. It makes it easier to understand and it gets you laughed at less. So if you see a mem with a schwa under it, the mem sound is going to come first and then the schwa sound. So this is going to be meh, not meh. So meh. All right, now we're ready for our first real vowel, kamatz. So this is kamatz. And kamatz always looks like a squashed little T underneath the letter. And sometimes the bottom part gets a little circle like this one, or sometimes it can just be a squared off line. And sometimes that line looks like a teardrop. Remember, the consonant comes first and then the vowel. So this is plus a, ma, not There are a handful of cases where kamatz sounds like an O sound, like O. Here's one of them. This is the word kol, and it looks like kal, right? You see a k with an a, so you think ka, and then a l, kal. But it's not. This is the word kol, which means all or every. So there are not too many words like this, but this is not the only one. There are a couple of them where the kamatz has an O sound, and you really just need to memorize them. There's so few that they're easily memorized. All right, our next vowel is patach, and it also sounds like a in Israeli Hebrew. Now, sometimes I see that one of these vowels sounds like, and they write it down, it sounds like AH, like ah, and the other one sounds like AW, which is supposed to sound different, right? They'll write it in the same book. This one sounds like AH, this one sounds like AW. I'm from California. My accent, AH and AW sound exactly the same. So I'm not exactly sure how they're supposed to sound differently. But most Israelis say both of these vowels exactly the same. So again, the consonant first, and then the vowel, ah, ma. All right, this vowel is called segel, and it is 3 dots in a triangle shape with 2 dots on top and 1 dot on the bottom. Segel is pronounced something between the of bed and the A of bay. So I want you to listen closely to how we say bay. Bay. At the end there, the vowel almost slips into an E sound. Bay. If you can make that A sound without doing that diphthong at the end, then you are going to get pretty close. Be, be. But if you find that too difficult, the E of bed, the sound of bed, is better than the A sound of bay, because there is another sounding vowel that the Ashkenazis say more like an A, and so you don't want to confuse those two vowels. And again, the consonant comes first and then the vowel. Me. Now, in general, Hebrew letters can only have 1 vowel each. But there are 3 cases where a letter can have a vowel in addition to a schwa. And I think this happens usually when the letter is a guttural, which are the letters that are made in the throat. So aleph, hey, chet, or ayin. And they don't have a lot of sound themselves. And I think what happens is that the morphological rules dictate that this word should have a schwa here, but a schwa is a silent vowel, and on top of a silent or almost silent consonant, there's nothing to be said there. So I think what ends up happening is they put a vowel, but they also put the schwa to um let the reader know that morphologically this should be a schwa, and the only reason that there's a vowel is so that it can be pronounced. Anyway, when we have this schwa with another vowel, we want to say the vowel name, we say, we put the word chataf before it. So we've got, from right to left, we've got chataf kamatz, chataf patach, and chataf segol. In the case of chataf patach and chataf segol, the presence of the schwa does not change anything. It does not make any difference in the sound of that vowel. It's just going to sound like the other vowel. So these two would be ma and me. But in the case of chataf kamatz, it is pronounced like an O for some reason. So this last one would be mo. And again, I'm not 100% sure of the rules, but these are usually seen on guttural letters. So I'm almost positive that it is not possible to have one of these vowels, one of these chataf vowels, actually on a mem. But I just continued to use the mem because that's the consonant that I was using as my example consonant. Now this next vowel is called tsere, and it is two dots side by side. In Israeli Hebrew, it sounds exactly the same as segol. It's a pure vowel, somewhere between the e of bed and the a of bay. So like e. But Ashkenazis and biblical scholars seem to always pronounce it more like the diphthong, a. But I pronounce it e. Me, me. Our next vowel is chirik, and it is one dot under the letter, and it goes right underneath in the middle underneath the letter. And it sounds like the I in pizza. So E. So E, me. And the same vowel can be depicted with the chirik underneath and a yod after the letter. And I think in biblical times, it probably made the sound stretch out a little bit longer, but it pretty much sounds the same with or without in modern Hebrew. And I want to take a quick break from learning vowels to talk about how to actually read the words. So hopefully by now you know that Hebrew is written from right to left. And so we're going to start over here with this lamed on the right. With really only one exception, the vowels always get read after the consonants. And I'll talk about that exception in a future video. But you might ask, well, what if a word starts with a vowel? I'm sure I've heard words that start with a vowel, and you're right, but that's where aleph and ayin come in. And so when you hear a word that starts with a vowel sound, then it's going to either have an ayin or an aleph at the very beginning for that vowel to kind of attach to. So to read this, you start with the first consonant, and then you read the vowel below it, and then the next consonant, and then the next vowel, the next consonant, the next vowel, the next consonant, and so on. So this word is le, la, med. Lelamed. Lelamed. It means to teach. All right, back to vowels. Our next vowel is cholam, and it is one dot above and to the left a little bit of the letter. Cholam sounds like O, so this here would be mo, mo. And forgive me for switching fonts here. It just was looking really weird in the other font. The other way to write the O vowel is with a dot above a vav. And this one is called cholam male, which means full cholam. And this dot in this font looks like a square, but that's just the weirdness of the font. It's normally a circle, just like all of the other dots. And it goes right above the vav, not to the left, like with the other cholam that we saw. So this too is mo, mo. All right, we're getting close to the end of the vowels. So here we have kubutz, and it sounds like oo. It's three dots, all in a line, a diagonal line from top left to bottom right underneath the consonant. So moo, moo. And the last vowel is shuruk. And it is basically a vav with a dot in its belly. And shuruk also sounds like oo. So this is moo, moo. So now you know all the vowels. Modern Israeli Hebrew has just 5 vowel sounds, a, e, I, o, u. But they have 10 ways to write them, 2 for each sound, especially if you include the chirik with a yod. Yeah. And now that you've learned all of the vowels, I want to talk about how a yod will affect the previous vowel. So yod always sounds like a Y. And when it comes after a vowel, which is basically always, unless it's at the very beginning of a word, it creates what we call a diphthong. And you hear a little bit of a yi sound at the end of the vowel. This syllable right here will be pronounced mai. So it's mai, and it sounds like mai. So this can happen in the middle of a word, and even if the yod has a vowel on it, it's going to affect the previous vowel. It's pretty much inevitable. It's very difficult to say ma yim without really having it turn into that diphthong, mayim. And that mayim means water. It can also happen at the end of a word. And at the end of the word, if you see like an vowel with a yod at the end, it's going to sound like the English pronoun I, right? So this word is pronounced raglai, raglai, and it means my feet or my legs. Moving on to the sounding vowels, when they are followed by a yod, traditionally they make more of an A sound, like that sound in the word bathe, like I was talking about earlier. So it's kind of like the with the E sound at the end. And I think in the Ashkenazi community, this is still a very common pronunciation. So for Israelis, the plus a yud, the diphthong is not very strongly pronounced, although it is still heard at the end of a word. So for example, right here, we have this word may, and it's a form of the word mayim. This is a construct form of the word mayim, which means it's always going to have another noun right after it. And so you usually see this as me yam, which means seawater, or me shtia, which means drinking water. And to my ear, it does sound like the English pronunciation of the month of May. Me yam, me shtia. But in the middle of a word, in the Israeli accent, you don't really hear it so much. So we've got these 2 words here, and they are minimal pairs. So they're exactly the same word, just one has the yod and one does not have the yod. And on top we have ben, which means son, like a male child. And the other is ben, bain, which means among or between. So I always learned that they sound different, ben and bain. But when I listen to my Israeli friends and my Israeli teachers speak, you really cannot hear the difference between these two words. And so I already talked about the chirik before. The chirik with or without a yud right after it is going to sound exactly the same. I think that there is maybe a slight difference in the length of the vowel in biblical Hebrew, but there's no difference in the quality or the sound of the vowel. Okay, when there is an O before the yud, it is going to end up sounding like oi. And if you are Jewish, or if you know Jewish people, I'm sure you've heard them say oi, or maybe you have said it yourself. It's an interjection, kind of like oh, but always in a negative way. If you hear a Jewish person say oi, it's not good news. And it's usually accompanied by more syllables. So we sometimes say oi lo to mean like, oh no, or oy vezmir, which comes from Yiddish, but and in Yiddish it means like, oh, it pains me. My personal favorite, oy vavoy. And lastly, the oo vowel plus a yud sounds like ooey, kind of like in the word gooey in English, like meaning sticky, except a little more succinct. So this word is stuyot, not like stuyot. This word means nonsense. It sounds most like the diphthong in gooey when it comes at the end of the word, like in this word shagui, which means wrong, as in if you have the wrong telephone number, you say yesh li mispar telefon shagui. So that's it for this video. You now know all of the vowel Nikkud points. Check out video number 2 to learn about the other Nikkud that are used in modern Hebrew. Between part 1 and part 2, if you are a beginner, you will at least be able to practice reading and pronouncing any Hebrew text. So if you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments and I will do my best to respond. And also, if you have some aspect of Hebrew grammar that has you flummoxed, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to make a video about it. Hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to see more. On Thursday, I will upload a new book review, and then on Sunday, I will have another Hebrew vocab boost video. Or you can just wait for next week's grammar video, which will be on the few special spelling changes that are used to write modern Hebrew without Nikkud. Lehitraot b'pa'am haba'ah. See you next time.